All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 thriller writers ever. At least according to me, at least according to the ones I've read. And they have to be writers that are currently in my book collection. So those are kind of the rules of the game. I'm sure some of you are going to notice writers that are thriller writers that I did not put on my list. Well, it's because they didn't fall into those category of rules that I just previously told you about. So what do I mean by thriller writer? Okay, there's legal thrillers, there's political thrillers, there's, James Bond type thrillers, there's Jason Bourne type thrillers, there's all types of thrillers, and I'm going to count down my top 10 favorite writers that write these kind of books, and it's as simple as that. But before we get to the top 10, I just have a handful of honorable mentions that I just couldn't leave off the list because their books and their series and the things that they write are so dope that I just had to include them in there. And so let's get through the handful of books that are in my honorable mention before we get to the exact top 10. So I'm going to go with, and these honorable mentions are in no particular order. They're not ranked or anything. They're just honorable mentions. And we're going to start with Daniel Silva's Gabriel Allon series of books about the international spy that double agents he restores old artwork, like old Picasso's, old Michelangelo's, old Da Vinci, old, Van Gogh's. He just restores a lot of old art. The first book in the series, I'm just going to hold up random books in the series. I think this is book number 8 or 9 in the series, but the first book, if you're interested, is The Kill Artist. And so there we got book honorable mention number 1. Honorable mention number 2, I'll leave my glasses off for this because I'm going to be looking at these. And that is Steve Berry's Cotton Malone series of international spy thrillers. These are kind of Da Vinci Code-esque, Dan Brown type thrillers starring Cotton Malone. And I believe the first book in the series, this one is called The Jefferson Key, but the first book in the series is called The Templar Legacy, I believe. And, they're just great. If you love the Da Vinci Code, if you like that type of thriller, Steve Berry's a great one to get into. And I think there's about 20 or 25 books in that series. And then I'm going to go with Mark Greene's The Gray Man series. Now, Mark Greene cut his teeth in the thriller market by writing the Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan novels. I mean, once Tom Clancy died, I think Mark Greene collaborated with Tom Clancy while Tom Clancy was still alive. But then once Tom Clancy died, Mark Greene took over the Jack Ryan series. But he's got his own series, the Gray Man series, which is super dope. Kind of like, I compare it a lot to the Jack Ryan series, only if Jack Ryan was actually like Jack Reacher, if that makes sense. The first book in the series is called The Gray Man. This is book number 8 or 9, Mission Critical. Another honorable mention, and this will be the last honorable mention before we get to the top 10, and that would be James Rollins. All of his thrillers are great. He's got a lot of standalone thrillers, like what are there? I can't even think of them now. Ice Hunt, Subterranean. I don't know. There's a shit ton of them. But his main series is the Sigma Force novels, and these are kind of a mix between the Gray Man and the Da Vinci Code and Steve Berry. And they're a mix. It's just everything. I mean, it's the Sigma Force. They go out and they investigate a lot of Illuminati-esque, Da Vinci Code-esque type things. The first book in the series, I believe, is called Sandstorm. Sandstorm is book number 1. This is The Eye of God. I don't know what number this one is, 8 or 9 in the series. Okay, let's get to my top 10. This is where the thriller books. These are thriller books that really stand out to me. Not that these didn't, because these are super fly. But I'm going to go with, as my number 10 favorite thriller writer of all time, and that is Brad Thor's Edge of Honor. This is well, I mean, this is just one of the middle books in the series. The first book in the series is called The Lions of Lucerne, and it is the Scott Harvath thriller series. Ex-CIA agent, does thriller things, kind of James Bondish. It's God, there's probably 30 books in this series now. I have met Brad Thor. I should have pulled out one of the books he signed of mine, but I met him once. And every time I read a review of Brad Thor book on the channel, I tell the same story of how I met Brad Thor when his first book came out at a book signing at the Barnes & Noble in Sugar House, Utah. And he lived up in Park City at the time. He came down to do a book signing. I was the only person at the book signing. He was a brand new author, but anyway, I love the Scott Harvath series. That goes at number 10. It's a random book out of it. And then, of course, well, actually, I pulled out book number 1 in this series. This is number 9. This is also written by a guy from Park City, Utah. Jack Carr, The Terminal List. His James Reese thriller series. Maybe you watched the show with Chris Pratt on whatever channel that's on. I don't know. I saw the first few episodes. The books are dynamite. Dynamite books. I mean, he's obviously my 9th favorite thriller writer of all time. And I've met him, and he's signed all my books, too. This one's probably signed. Yes, this one is signed, yeah. Anyway, I always show those off. My number 9 favorite thriller writer of all time is Jack Carr in The Terminal List. My number 8 favorite thriller writer of all time, and this, you can't argue with this one. This guy, these thrillers are thrillers, badass thrillers with the most badass thriller character of all time, and that is Lee Child's The Jack Reacher series. This is book number 1, The Killing Floor. Number 8 favorite thriller writer of all time is Lee Child. Everybody wants to be Jack Reacher. Everybody wants to be Jack Reacher. In fact, there was Charisma on Command. That YouTube channel, which is wildly popular, used snippets of my review of this book. In the Charisma on Command channel, they used snippets of my review. They took parts of my YouTube review of this book, put it in that Charisma on Command channel when they were talking about charisma and kind of like these James Bond-like characters and these Jack Reacher-like characters. I thought that was cool. They didn't get my permission, but I don't give a fuck. They can have it. I thought it was an honor just to be on the Charisma on Command channel. That's all I got to say about that. Even though they didn't get permission. But I don't care. I don't care. It's fine. Nelson DeMille is a great thriller writer. He's got so many standalone thrillers like The Charm School, and he's got his thriller series starring Jack Corey, starting with Plum Island. But Nelson DeMille is my 7th favorite thriller writer. His books are laugh out loud funny. The plots are intricate. The plots are interesting. The thrillers and action and it's just, I mean, everything about Nelson DeMille is great. It comes in at number 7. Coming in at number 6 is another guy that just, I mean, this one is inarguable again. This is one of the legends in the thriller genre. In fact, gosh, I mean, probably the second. This thriller writer was probably the second one I discovered in life as a young guy, and I started collecting all of his books. There's another thriller writer coming up that finishes higher on the list that was the first thriller writer that I ever read. But this one was the second one, and that's Robert Ludlum. Right here, I've got the Matrice countdown. Of course, everybody knows Robert Ludlum for the Jason Bourne Identity series. That's what he's most famous for. But, I mean, every thriller that he wrote is great. I mean, there's about 23 thrillers he wrote throughout his lifetime. Maybe a little more than that. But the Matrice Circle and the Matrice Countdown are 2 of his best. That's what I've got here. Coming in at number 6 is Robert Ludlum. Yay! Now we're to the top 5. This is where they really get good, and this is where some of these writers really mean a lot to me, actually. Some of these writers have really changed my life. And so my number 5 thriller writer of all time, and this guy doesn't write James Bond type thrillers. He's not Jack Reacher type thriller. Not a this is not a terminalist type thriller or a any of that. This is a not Jason Bourne. This is a legal thriller. Legal thrillers, I was said, would be part of this, and that is John Grisham. John Grisham. I started reading John Grisham about the same time I started reading Robert Ludlum, and I just remember getting The Firm. This is A Time to Kill was his first thriller. The Firm was the one that broke out big. That's the one I read first, and oh my God, I was swept away in that world, and the way that John Grisham described the legal process and how young people come out of college and get a job in the legal field and all the money that they get offered. I was just enthralled with the whole thing, and I became an instant John Grisham fan when I read The Firm, and I've been collecting all of his books since. He's a must-read for me, so John Grisham comes in at number 5 with his legal thrillers. And then number 4, another author. This author is actually probably in my top 5 favorite authors of all time. He's number 4 favorite thriller writer, but he would also finish very high in my favorite historical fiction writers because he wrote Pillars of the Earth, and that is Ken Follett with Eye of the Needle. And Ken Follett has written about a dozen thrillers. Other than his Horace, most people know him for his historical fiction, but he had a side career. He did a little side quest in his younger years where he wrote a lot of thrillers, World War II thrillers, just some smash up, bang up, out of sight thrillers. And Eye of the Needle is the best of the group. And so, Ken Follett just finishes number 4 on my list of best thriller writers of all time. You can't argue with that guy. He's just one of my favorite authors of all time. My number 3 favorite thriller writer of all time, and I'm going to hold up his newest book, but that is Dan Brown. This is his newest book that came out a month ago, The Secret of Secrets. Of course, everybody knows Dan Brown from Angels and Demons, from the Da Vinci Code. Just a mega monster, best-selling author of thrillers. And these, of course, are the type of thrillers. They're not James Bond thrillers. They're not Jason Bourne thrillers. They're not Jack Reacher thrillers. These are the types of thrillers where you got to think your way through a lot of Masonic Lodge and Illuminati and Knights Templar type puzzles to figure out who's in control of all the world's information and why they're trying to destroy all of us and everything like that. And it's just every one of them is a fun puzzle to put together and to figure out. And I love Dan Brown's books. And so he is my number 3 favorite thriller writer of all time. My number 2 favorite thriller writer of all time is another legend in the field and probably should finish number 1 on most everyone's list. But here he's going to fall at number 2. Great writer. I've got all of his books. Just one of my favorites. And this is just a random book of his I pulled off the bookshelf. But he's known for a lot of stuff. And, I pulled off, this is John le Carré, of course. Everybody knows John le Carré is just one of the greatest writers of all time. Literary fiction wrapped up in a political spy thriller. Absolutely. This is it. This guy writes literary fiction. This guy was a spy himself. And again, this is not James Bond. This is not Jack Reacher. This is not Jason Bourne. This is John le Carré writes spy thrillers about actual spies, like what spying would actually be like. Sometimes he even gets into the nitty-gritty, mundane details of spycraft that would bore everybody to tears. But he makes it interesting. Now, he is most famous for, of course, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Constant Gardener, The Tailor of Panama. I could just go on and on. There's been about a dozen movies made out of his books, and they are all great movies, and every one of his books is fantastic. John le Carré comes in at number 2. Who, pray tell, will come out at number 1, and the number 1 guy is the first ever thriller writer I ever read in my life when I was a teenager. And this guy has remained my top thriller writer throughout my life, and I've bought everything he's done. And he even died, and somehow they're still writing novels. He's still writing novels, even in death. And that is Tom Clancy. This is Patriot Games. Of course, he is known for his Jack Ryan series that came out in the early 1980s, just a popular series. Probably the most popular series of any of them that I've got here. But Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy, I love the detail that he puts in all of his books. I mean, if he's gonna mention a nuclear submarine in one of his books, you're gonna get 10 pages of every detail and everything that's going on in that nuclear submarine. And I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. I geek out on that kind of stuff. I think it's great. If there's a gun or a pistol or a machine gun or a jeep or a tank or a satellite system or a computer system or a virus or anything that this guy mentions in his thriller novels, he goes into great detail explaining to you exactly what they are. And that's why he's so popular, because, he was always kind of ahead of his time, explaining military technology before any of the public even knew about it. It's just fantastic, fantastic. And his stories were action-packed thrillers. And that is why Tom Clancy is my number one favorite thriller writer of all time. And that is a list that you could probably argue with. And if there's some that I don't have in my collection that I'm missing, please drop a note. I will know that you watched the entire video. If you say, I watched the video, Durfee, and you missed a few, and put them into the comments. Put your recommendations in the comments. That's all I'm saying.